I think Dr. Mar can start sharing your slides first, whether it's possible for you to do so now. Thank you. Okay, that's excellent. We can see your slides now. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sejahtera. Very good afternoon. Today, we are very honored to have Dr. Siti Mardiana Muhammad. Dr. Siti Mardiana, or fondly called as Dr. Mar, she's a lecturer and immunologist from the Department of Clinical Sciences of IPPT. Today, Dr. Mar will be giving a talk in our webinar series entitled Scoping Review. So I believe Dr. Mar will be delivering an overview of the subject. So this talk, I think, is very important for all researchers and especially also to the students, because this is something that you would want to do before you embark on a new research area. Because scoping review is a method that is quite rigorous, and it is actually quite a transparent method of doing a review, which studies the body of evidence that is available in a new in a particular research area. So it actually does a scope or a scoping, whether from the volume of the research findings, from or the characteristics or the nature of a particular research interest. So I think maybe we have heard of scoping review before, but we are not sure of it, or maybe how to conduct such a review. And maybe one of you would be asking what is the difference, scoping review from the usual meta-analysis or systematic review. So I think we can reserve the questions to the speaker, and we welcome questions. Either you can put it in the chat box, or you can raise your hands at the end of the talk. And for your information, this session is being recorded, and to those who miss this talk, will be giving an email to the link of the recording. And also, one CPD point will be awarded to USM staff, and you can scan the QR code using your USM passport application. So without further ado, I would like to call upon our speaker, Dr. Siti Mardiana Muhammad, to start the presentation. Over to you, Dr. Mar.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bakia, for the brief overview on scoping review. And Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to everyone. So, first of all, I would like to thank the Breast Cancer Translational Group for inviting me to give a talk on this scoping review topic. Actually, to claim myself as an expert in scoping review, I think I am not that expert, but I do have experience in publishing scoping review. So I would like to share the experiences and the knowledge that I have in scoping review. So for today, the outline of my talk is that I'm going to talk on the overview on the various reviews, a brief overview, and then the introduction on scoping review. And also, like Dr. Bakia mentioned earlier, you all must be wondering what is the difference between systematic review and also scoping review. So I will talk on this, the characteristics of the scoping review and also the systematic review, and the indications for conducting the scoping review and how to conduct a scoping review, and I will give an examples on publishing a scoping review protocol and also publishing a full scoping review. All right, so as a scientist and also as a researcher in Malaysia, we are asked to do a lot of research projects. So whenever we want to start a project, we need to search for evidence on our latest project. So to do this, we will go back to reviews. So there are different reviews that we had, and among the famous, the popular reviews are the literature review, the narrative review, also the systematic review, or also known as the Cochrane systematic review, and also a scoping review. So what is the literature review? So I know most of you should know about this literature review. It is a description of the literature relevant to a particular topic or field, and it summarizes the literature that is available on that particular topic, and also gives an overview of the field of inquiry, what has already been said on the topic, who the key writers are, what are the questions that being asked, what are the methodologies involved, and what methods are appropriate or useful. And this is often written as a part of a research proposal or before commencement of any project. And we also have a narrative review, which discuss and summarize the literature on a particular topic, which mainly it is a descriptive review, gives a comprehensive overview of a topic rather than addressing a specific question. And usually this is chosen based on the availability or the author selections. And a narrative review does not often report on how the search for literature was carried out. So they don't have a specific protocol or specific method or how it was decided which studies were relevant to include. Okay, so we come to the systematic. So according to this paper published by Mann et al., the systematic review can be broadly defined as a type of a research synthesis that are conducted by a review groups with specialized skills. Okay, so those people who conduct systematic review are those who are specialized in doing the systematic review and who set out to identify and retrieve the international evidence that is relevant to a particular questions, to appraise and synthesize the results of this search to inform the practice, some policies, and in some cases to do a further research. And according to the Cochrane Handbook, it uses an explicit, a systematic methods selected to minimize the bias and thus providing more reliable findings from which conclusions can be drawn and decisions made. And it involves a comprehensive or systematic literature review, and it includes detailed search strategy, which is in contrast with other reviews that I mentioned before, and it may or may not include a meta-analysis component to synthesize data from several studies, which include the statistical analysis, which is the common statistical analysis involved in systematic reviews, where they look at the odd ratios, weighted and standardized mean differences, and relative risk. And it is a famous and well-known international organizations for systematic reviews, where before they start their study, they need to register in their, for example, in the Cochrane collaboration or Cochrane database, Health Evidence, or Prospero. So for scoping review, similarly to systematic review, it involves a comprehensive and a systematic literature review, and it provides a relevant and quantified results where it maps the evidence about the knowledge available on a particular topic within and without the particular research areas, especially where an area is complex or and has not been reviewed comprehensively before. And similarly to the systematic review, it also includes a detailed search strategy to ensure that the further research in the area is beneficial, where it is able to identify the gaps in research related to a defined area or topic. And also, similar to systematic reviews, it also follows a structured process where it has its own specific methods and protocol. However, they are performed for different reasons and have some key methodological differences. And also, they are more broad compared to the systematic review, which is the topic, the topic area is more narrowed and specific, and it is also a valid approach in those circumstances where systematic reviews are unable to meet the necessary objectives or requirements of knowledge users. And it usually, scoping review is done as the first stage of a research project, informing the following, informing following the following work. So the characteristics of the scoping review and systematic review, like I mentioned just now, both systematic review and scoping review, they involves a comprehensive literature search. And for systematic review, it attempts to answer a clearly defined question or looking at a narrow parameter. And whereas for the scoping review, the research questions often broad, and it may provide a tool for summarizing the literature in a specific topic area. For systematic review, it assesses the quality of articles. Okay, it cannot simply choose any articles. It adhere to a strict protocol. Whereas for the scoping review, the quality of articles are not an initial priority, where it creates a rich database of literature for more detailed reviews, which are relevant and quantified to the topic of interest, where we can also search in a gray, what we call this, the gray literature, which involve books, policies, websites. And for systematic review, it generates a conclusion relating to the focus research question, where it may provide or produce a statements to guide decision making. Whereas in scoping review, the conclusion usually we will mention that it is able to identify the gaps in a body of literature. And in systematic review, it involves a detailed data extraction. And whereas for the scoping review, like I mentioned in the previous slide, it is a first stage of a particular project informing the following work. And it also, when you start with scoping review, it can also followed by a systematic review. So the indications for conducting a scoping review is that it is to map the literature and the existing evidence, where you want to look at the type and origin of the studies, the sources of the evidence, the population involved, the location, and the time that the study was conducted. And another indications is that it is to summarize the evidence or the findings systematically, to identify and analyze the knowledge gaps and make recommendations for the future research program and policymakers. In addition, it is also to clarify the key concepts or definitions in literature, and it also to determine the ability to conduct systematic reviews. So it can be as a precursor to the systematic review. And how to utilize the scoping review? So you can do it as a standalone research project, or it can also be a part of a research project or thesis chapters literature review, okay, because you map the evidence, and you can also, in your project, you will be able to identify the best methods, the assessment of tools or questionnaire, and develop items for intervention or the questionnaires. And also, it can be as a part of resources for research management, for example, to purchase of equipment or best lab methods, all right, and to revise the budget or human resources, or also it can also be used to inform the program managers or the policy makers. Okay, now we come to the session of how to conduct a scoping review. Okay, so to get started, the first step is that you need to identify the area or the topic of interest, and then you need to come up with the questions of the interest. Okay. Once you have identified the topic of interest, then the next step is that you need to check whether there is an existing or ongoing reviews. So you don't want to do a scoping review that has been published before. And then you need to justify why you need to have this new review. Okay. And then the third step is to identify the group members. Okay, you need to form a group, and the minimum of members are two. I would not encourage to have one, because you need two people, because you want somebody else to validate the papers that you have found, and also to validate the data that you charted from the studies. And then the next step, the step 4, is to develop the review questions, okay, related to your topic of interest and also your objectives of your topic interest. And then step 5 is to prepare the protocol for scoping review. And the good thing is that similarly to systematic review, you can publish the protocol. But for systematic review, if I'm not mistaken, you have to publish in their specific journals. But for scoping review, you can publish in any journals who accepted the protocol for scoping review. And then you manage the review based on the protocol, and then you publish the findings of your scoping review. So for the scoping review methods and reporting guidelines, okay, there are three popular methods that are being used. So the initial scoping review methods framework proposed by Axie and O'Malley in 2005, and then elaborated by the Levesque and Colquhoun and O'Brien in 2010. And then there is this Joanna Briggs Institute, or known as JBI, which also published a guidance for the conduct of the scoping reviews in 2015, and they have also updated the guidance in 2017 and the latest in 2020. And also there is a Prisma SCR published in 2018, which is a reporting guideline specific to scoping reviews. If you ask me, all of these three, which is the famous methods that have been used, is the first one is the JBI, the Joanna Briggs Institute, and the second one is the Axie and O'Malley. Okay, for the JBI guidelines, for the JBI methods, okay, for any scoping review, it's a must to develop a protocol development before you start doing your scoping review. I do have people coming to me asking for opinions to publish a scoping review, but when I ask them for the protocol, none of them develop this protocol. Why I said it is important to develop this protocol, because this protocol will help you, will guide you on how your scoping review will be. Okay, if you are planning to publish in a JBI journal, such as the JBI Evidence Synthesis, the protocol must be registered in the Open Science Framework. Otherwise, for other journals, you do not need to register the protocol. the common journals that that accept this protocol for scoping review are like the BMC or even the BMJ open access journals. And then after you develop the protocol, then you will start searching for the relevant studies and then select the study that are related to your topic of interest and then starting charting the evidence from the papers. Okay, this charting evidence meaning that those that related to your questions for your topic of interest and then report the results and publish your scoping review. Whereas for the Axi O'Malley, it involves 5 stages, okay? But basically, if you look carefully between this Axi O'Malley and also the JBI guidelines, actually it is almost quite identical because you can see that first of all, you really need to have the protocol and then the methods for Axi O'Malley, you have 5 stages where you need to have identified the research questions to be addressed, okay, and then to identify of the studies relevant to the research question, and then you will select the studies that include to be included in the review, and then charting of the information and data within the included studies, and you collating, summarize, and report the results. And it is an optional whether you want to have a consultation with the stakeholders. This is usually when you are doing a scoping review related to you want to inform the policymakers. Okay, so this is, if you can see here, this is the Prisma P, which is a preferred reporting items for the systematic review and meta-analysis protocols in 2015 checklist. So these are the recommended items to address in a systematic review protocol. If you look here, the checklists are detailed. So, but we can also use this as a reference for checklist for you to develop the protocol and for your to publish your scoping review. If you can see here, you have the title, which is also included in the scoping review. Registration, it depends. You don't need if you don't want to publish in the JBI guidelines, and you need to involve the authors. All right. And then you need to have the introduction, the rationale of doing the project, of the topic of interest, and your objectives. And then the methods, it include also the eligibility criteria, information sources, and search strategy. So all these are also, it depends on which method that you use, either the Axio O'Malley or the JBI guidelines, but basically both guidelines or methods also need to have this information. And you can also see there is outcomes and prioritization, risk bias, and data synthesis and meta bias. These are all specifically for a systematic review. It does not need in the scoping review. So this is the protocol for scoping review. Okay, the checklist for scoping review protocol. So if you look here, it is much simpler compared to the systematic review. So here you need to have the title, which it must be explicit and clear, and the title you should include the phrase a scoping review. Okay, it's a must. I give you an example since since the breast cancer group organized this talk, so I would give a title, for example, like this: the role of precision medicine in a breast cancer management, a scoping review. Okay, as simple as that, clear, and you know what is your topic of interest. And then you have the review team or authors. Okay, you need to include the affiliations for each author and email address, and then highlight the role and responsibilities in the review. For example, you have author one, who will be the person searching for the papers and then validating and charting the evidence. And then you have the second person that only validate the evidence. All right. And then the third the third things that you need to have in your protocol is the introduction or background. Okay, the rationale for the review, what is already known about the the topic. For example, like the role of precision in medicine in breast cancer management. What have already known? Is it already being widely established? And is it already a diagnostic in the breast cancer management? And then your aim or objectives of the review. So example of the objectives, it can be related to the title of the role of precision medicine in breast cancer management. It can be the first objective, it can be to identify and map the evidence on the role of the precision medicine in breast cancer management. So it can be like that. And your next question can be to identify the methods of precision medicine that are being used to in this breast cancer management. So that is the examples that I give. All right. And then the methods. Okay, for the rest of this talk, I'm going to go with the Axie O'Malley because I'm familiar more with that Axie O'Malley method. So, looking at the Axie O'Malley method, the first stage is to identify the research questions. Okay, for example, again, with the title of the role of the precision medicine in the breast cancer management. So, what are the research questions you can have? So, you can have, for example, what are the current evidence that you have? What are the current evidence on the role of precision medicine? And then the second one is, what are the methods that have been used? So basically, the question is related back to your objectives that you mentioned in the introduction. So there is no specific minimum objective that you need to provide. Some papers I did come across where they just provide one objective just to map the evidence. There are other also that like two or three objectives that they mention in their scoping review. And then looking at the five stage, the stage two is the identification of the studies relevant to the research questions. So the stage two involves that you need to have a proper search strategy and resources or types of a database that you want to look at. Okay, the systemic search um, across, you need to have a systemic search on how you're going to use the keywords or search terms. These are the keywords or search terms that you will type in the electronic database that you choose. For example, the electronic database search that are popular, for examples like the Medline, the Embase, the Ovid, the Cochrane, EBSCOhost, Google Scholar, Science Direct, PubMed. All this you can use as your database to search for the papers, for the studies related to your topic of interest using the specific keywords or search terms. And also, like I mentioned earlier, the difference between scoping review and systematic review is that in scoping review, you can do a grey literature searching where you can search a relevant websites, example like the agencies, the ministries, the institutes, the universities, WHO, or any relevant discipline based on the list of servers. And you can also look at the proceedings, technical report, annual report, thesis. All this can be included as your resources in a scoping review. And another thing that you need to include in this is that eligibility criteria, which means the inclusion and exclusion criteria, where some people do confuse when we mention about the inclusion and exclusion criteria. For example, like if I give you an example for a topic like the association of ABO blood group and allergic disease. So their eligibility criteria is that, okay, they just want to see in adult, they want to see those patients with allergic rhinitis only. So that kind of inclusion and exclusion criteria, it is similar to like when you want to perform lab work or how you're going to choose your sample. But it's different in this scoping review where the eligibility criteria, it refers to the papers that you want to search. For example, what you need to have is the years. Okay, for years, like if you think that your topic of interest, it has been published since 1900 or since 1920, 1950, so you can include the years starting from 1950 until 2020 or until 2022. Okay, and then the language, it's either you want to go with an only English papers, or you want to have any language, Malay, Indian, Chinese, or any languages. So it depends on your inclusion and exclusion criteria, and whether you want to find a human related papers only, or it's animals papers, or any in vitro or cell line papers. So it's up to you. You can set your inclusion and exclusion criteria on how you're going to search your papers. Okay, so are the examples of keywords and synonyms. All right, so this is the most important part, because if you miss this, then you will not be able to get the right papers that are related to your topic of interest. Like I mentioned, example of the title that I can think here is that the role of precision medicine in breast cancer management. Okay, so you need to have the important keywords here, like you need to have the role, precision medicine, breast cancer management, and then you need to find the synonyms of all these each keywords, so that all these keywords and synonyms you will type in your database when you want to search your papers. Okay, these are the examples I give. Like for role, you can have the synonym is impact, the precision medicine, the personalized medicine, genomic medicine, pharmacogenomics. Okay, for breast cancer, I couldn't find any other related and any synonyms. Okay, and then management, maybe the treatment. So you can use this. Okay, it is important, because if you don't have a correct keywords and synonyms, you will not be able to find the right papers, or sometimes you will come with a very huge numbers of your first screening of papers or articles. You will get a lot. You can go up to 100, 200,000 papers. Okay, so it is very important to have a specific keywords and synonyms for your search strategy. All right, and then going to the third stage, which is the selection of studies to include in the review. So once you have okay, you already type in your keywords, your synonyms, all that in your database, PubMed or AppScore of it, and then you will have the first numbers of how many articles comes up. Okay, so that will be your first screening. And then what you need to do is that you need to screen all these papers. For example, if your first, when you type all the keywords and the synonyms in the PubMed or the Ovid or any database, the first one you come up with, let's say 10,000 articles. Okay, that one is for first PubMeds. And then the second one, when you type with the same, it is important, you have to bear in mind that you need to use the same keywords and synonyms for all the database that you use. You cannot use, like for example, in PubMed, you just use the role of breast cancer in the role of precision medicine in cancer management. Okay, so PubMed you get around 10,000, and then in of it you use a different keywords. You type the impact of uh, pharmacogenomics, in breast cancer management. No, you cannot do that. You have to make sure that all the database that you use all are similar. And then, for example, in PubMed, you get 10,000 articles, and then of it, you get like 5,000, 15,000. Then you need to add both numbers so that you will get the first screening numbers. Okay. And then once you have this, you can, what we usually practice is that we can transfer all this into the endnotes. Okay, And from here, you need to screen all these papers, the titles and the abstract. Whether all these papers, all these, like, for example, you total up like 25,000 from both database. So you need to screen whether the title and abstract are related to your topic of interest, that are related to your objectives and your research questions. Okay, once you have screened that, then you need to screen the full text articles. Okay, and then you describe the validity assessment, how you assess the studies. Okay, whether you have, the best is you have two reviewers independently assess all articles. I need to stress that people think that scoping review is simple. Okay, that you think it's like a one person work, but actually it's not. You need to involve other person. If you have a student, you are the supervisor, and you have a student, you need to what the students find the papers, you as the supervisor, or you can also ask the help of your co-supervisor to validate that paper, whether it's really related to your topic of interest or not. What I found out, the practice so far that we had here, that they all give it wholly to the students to produce this, which I think it's quite wrong. I would advise to have two reviewers independently assess all the articles and also look at the data that are being charted from the papers. Okay, so this is the Prisma 2009 flow diagram, okay, by Moher et al., where this is the standard on how you're going to report on how many papers that you have come to and what are the papers, how many papers that you chart the evidence for your full report. Okay, as you can see here, records identified through the database searching. Okay, this I mentioned just now, where when you look at the PubMed, you got 10,000, of it, you got 15,000, and then let's say you have another database, for example, Science Direct, you got around 30,000. So you need to add all of this, which makes a total of 60,000. So you need to write here and equals to 60,000. Okay, and then if you are looking at other like websites or other thesis papers, proceedings, then you need to add here. Okay, and then that's why I said that our practice is that we transfer all these papers, articles into the EndNote, because I think there's also people using Mendeley. Mendeley also can help in doing this. So where you can also remove those duplicates paper. Okay, so when you remove the duplicates paper from 60,000, maybe you will come up with like 1,000 or 5,000, and then you need to record screen all this based on the titles and the abstracts. Okay, so like after you remove the duplicates, and then you screen at the titles and the abstracts. Okay, for example, from 1,000, you see that only around 500 papers that are related to your research questions, and also to your to your research questions and your objectives. So that is the papers that you're going to write here. And records excluded are those that are not related to your um title, to your topic of interest. And then full text articles assessed for eligibility. Okay, this include those papers that you are able to access, because some of the papers that, which is, if you put your eligibility criteria, your inclusion criteria is that you work from the 1900 until 2020, there is a high possibility that you will not be able to access those papers in 1900. So that one you can put here as excluded with reasons, saying that okay, this is you cannot access the full papers. All right, and then studies included in the qualitative synthesis. Okay, this one, because this one is meta-analysis, it also being used for the systematic review. But for scoping review, you can already mention here already how many papers that you that you use that are really related to your research questions and to your objectives. Okay. People also ask me, okay, usually how many papers? Okay. How many papers that you think that we need to have to say that this is valid? There's no minimum, there's no maximum. I heard there's papers, a scoping review, they just come across at the final, there's only one paper. There's also groups that done scoping review. Their final papers that they need to read is around 200, 500. So it depends on how lucky you are, on how many people has published the topics of your interest. Okay. And then the fourth stage is that the charting of information and data within the included studies. Okay, where you extract the information or data from the articles and then charting the table or form to record the findings. Okay, you need to make a proper table, and the key information that you need to have in those extract data is that the author, the year of publication, country of origin, aims, objectives, method, sample size, participants, settings, key findings. Or it depends on you, on how you want to, on how you're going to extract the data. So that's why I say it is important for you to have the protocol before you start doing the scoping review, so that you will be able, that protocol will be as your guidance for you to look at this. Okay, and then the last stage is collecting, summarizing, and reporting the results. Okay, where stage 5, you need to data summary and synthesis of results, use of evidence table, summary, figure, or framework. And if it's this is optional for stage 6, where you can do a consultation process and what type of input from the experts, stakeholders, or key informants. Okay, so this is an example of a data charting table. Okay, so like this, the title is Prevalence and Assessment of Nutritional Status Among Children with Cerebral Palsy, Down Syndrome, and Autism. So here, because it involved a few people, so they have already, in this project, they delegate this project to few people. So this is what they've got. Like, for example, the first author, the first member, for example, Miss Chong. So this is what she's got from her paper. So because like for example, if you have like at the end you need to read like 500 papers, I don't think one people will be able to do that. So that's why you need other members to help to also read the papers, so and chart the evidence from that for here, because she is looking, because her title is the Prevalence and Assessment of Nutritional Status Among Children with Cerebral Palsy, Down Syndrome, and Autism. So here she mentioned the study and what is the purpose, and the participant characteristic, at what age, how many sample size, comparison group and sample size, and tools, and also rate and prevalence. Okay. All right. So that is about the how to conduct a scoping review. So here I would like to share some example of published protocol and scoping review. Okay, so this one I took from a BMJ Open, where they published this in last year 2021. You can see here the title is a scoping review protocol to understand the conceptualization, implementation, and practices of the health promotion within the context of the primary healthcare in Africa. All right. So what you need to have in your protocol is that you need to have the introduction, and then the methods and analysis. So it mentioned here, you need to mention this, you use the, whether you use the JBI guideline, and for this paper, they use the RC O'Malley, and mention about the 5 stages, and also what are the databases that they use, and claim the ethics and dissemination. And every scoping review papers, you need to mention the strengths and limitations of this study. Okay. And then this is, although it's a protocol, you don't have the result yet because you haven't conduct the study, but you still need, if you want to publish the protocol, you need to provide the the table on how you're going to extract the data from all the papers that you found. Okay. And then at the end, you need to, before this, you need to mention for each stages of axiomery how you will conduct that, explain, and then mention the limitations and also the conclusion. Okay. And there's another paper that I would like share with you, which is a full scoping review. So this is my group that we publish. All right. So it's about on the association of the ABO blood groups with allergic diseases scoping review. So here we mention the objective and the design, and then the data source and the eligibility criteria. So for this study, we include all those studies that on a case control, prospective or retrospective, cross-sectional, experimental, literature reviews, systematic reviews, meta-analysis, copy reviews. So all this we include, and then we extract the data where we have a two reviewer independently screen the titles. So for this, I help my student. So this is actually being done by my student. So I help her to screen the titles and also validate all the data that she extract. And then from there, we produce the results and the conclusion of this study. Right. So if you can see the conclusion here, the conclusion here, we mentioned here, this copy review serve as preliminary evidence for the association, and the further studies need to be conducted. Okay, to tell you, so actually this paper we published in BMJ Open, we took about 1 year, 1 year to be reviewed, and we got a comment from one of the reviewer, because initially our conclusion is that we don't mention about serve as preliminary evidence, and then our conclusion is that because from this study we found out that blood group O has the highest association with allergic diseases, so we made a conclusion like this. So blood group O is associated with allergic diseases. So this scoping review is helpful in providing the information to the clinician to as a risk factors for those patients to develop allergic diseases. Okay, so that is the conclusion that we made. So what the comments that we got from the reviewer is that the conclusion is for systematic review. It's not suitable for scoping review. So bear in mind, for scoping review, you don't have to produce a conclusion that looks like, you don't have to produce a statements that like a definite statements to guide the decision making. You just need to say that, you can say that as a preliminary evidence. So, and you say that to identify and to help for further research work to be carried out. Okay, so that's example of conclusion that I can give. And then here you can see the keywords that we use. So we have the as you can see, the title is ABO blood groups, and then allergic diseases, because we know allergic diseases consist of the asthma, allergic rhinitis, atopic dermatitis, so we include all this. Okay, when we publish this, some papers they don't request your supplementary on how you search your data, but for us, the the reviewer asked for us to provide the supplementary data where how we conduct this study, what are the keywords that we use, and what are the how many papers that we got from first database. So luckily my students transfer all this into the Excel, so we can provide that as a supplementary data. And then the description of data extracted, so what we extract from all the papers. And here you can see these are the Prisma 2009 diagrams flowchart. So here where we identify from I cannot remember. I think we choose from 3 database. Okay, for the database there is no guidelines saying that you need to have how many database that you need to have to search for scoping review. But to be safe, you should have at least two database, major meaning that a big database, for example, like PubMed or EBSCO or Ovid. Okay. And then we also identified through other sources, and then duplicates by using the EndNote. We remove, we come up with 8,415. And then when we screen from this 8,415 um, that are related to our abstracts and titles, only left us with 78. Okay, so it means that from 8415 minus 78, so we have 8337. So the reasons, because of due to the title and abstract do not met the eligibility criteria. And then from this 78, we only managed to get 14 papers, right? And because of the missing full text and not related, sometimes there are papers that um you look like almost like what you are looking for, but then when you read the paper thoroughly in detail, it doesn't answer your research questions. And finally, these are all the papers we divided into this, because we divided into according to the allergic the types of allergic diseases. All right. So as a conclusion, so scoping review is a useful tools for evidence synthesis approach. It is the purpose of the review is the purpose of this scoping review is to identify the knowledge gaps, to scope a body of literature, to clarify concepts, to investigate the research conduct, or to inform, okay, as a precursor to systematic review. And compared to systematic review, it has a broader scope, and however, it's still, although it's a broader scope, it still require a rigorous and transparent methods in their conduct to ensure that the results are trustworthy. So before I end, I just would like to acknowledge special thanks to my Tok Guru who introduced me and teach me on this scoping review. Allah Yarhamah Dr. Nur Safiza Umar. She's if in Malaysia, I think we can call her as the top guru of scoping review, because she was previously a deputy director of research at the Institute Kesihatan Negara NIH MOH. So she passed away in 2020 because of breast cancer. So she's actually a breast cancer survivor, and she's very positive about her disease. But at the end, she succumbed to the disease due to metastasis to the brain. Okay, so if possible, let us, because she did come to IPPT two times, giving a talk on scoping review and also a workshop on scoping review. And if possible, can we sedekah Al-Fatihah to Allah Yarhamah? Okay, with that, I end my talk for today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mar. Yeah, we owe a lot to the late Dr. Nur Safiza, or Kak Fiza, who was our good friend, and we lost her, I think, to this dreadful disease, breast cancer. And it's very imperative that the breast cancer group also would like to initiate this scoping review as legacy of Dr. Nur Safiza. And we know that Dr. Nur Safiza, yeah, I agree with Dr. Mar saying that she would be the guru of scoping review in Malaysia. In fact, the expert in this area. And she did come to IPPT and conducted very valuable, and first as introductory, and later conducted workshops on scoping review to IPPT participants. So semoga Allah memberi balasan yang baiklah kepada Allah Yarhamah. Thank you, Dr. Mar. Allow me to apologize to you. I mentioned that you are from the Department of Clinical Sciences. Dr. Siti Mariana is actually from the Department of Community Health. And it was a very informative session. It was made very clear by Dr. Siti Mariana the differences between the two common most systematic review against scoping review. If there's any questions, I would like to invite any participants with questions to, maybe you can unmute yourself and ask Dr. Mardiana. I don't think we have question. Sorry, Dr. Mar, maybe you could just scroll through the chat box. I don't think there's any questions here. Just asking for slides. Yeah, we will be sharing the link to this recording, and the recordings will also be uploaded on IPPT YouTube channel. Yeah, so look forward to that. Dr. Mar, maybe I have one or two questions for you. The first one would be you mentioned that there would or could be a particular situation where um, scoping review is superior, or systematic review couldn't cover a certain area, and this gives opportunity for scoping review more rather than systematic. So may I know what sort of examples these are conditions?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bakia, for the question. Um, I because I'm actually not an expert in systematic review. So far for me, I don't know which part of systematic review that which topic that will not be covered for by systematic review. Um,
Maybe I want to ask you clear, when what I know about systematic review usually
mm,
cover a particular treatment or a particular drugs treatment lah, treatment for to treat something, and the question would always be starting like, will this drug or will this treatment or will this method or surgery or procedure be effective to treat a disease X, for example.
mm.
Right. So, do you mean to say that scoping review is not confined to that kind of questions?
Um, Yes, I think because you want to provide like a definitive saying that these drugs will be able, because you want to show evidence, you want to confirm that these drugs really can treat that disease. So the best is systematic review, because you will provide like an, if you are going to do it with a meta analysis, it will provide a stronger confirmation saying that that drug is really is really treating that disease. But I think, because as I mentioned, scoping review can be a precursor for systematic review. So if you can twist that sentence a bit, I mean, also you said that this drug is new. So what you can say is that if you just mention that this can be to map the evidence of this drug in treating the disease, it can also it can also be done as a scoping review before you proceed to systematic review. You just need, when you do the conclusion, you just need to twist the sentence so that it doesn't conclude as a very, as a confirmation, as a definitive conclusion to that. Do you get what I mean, Dr. Bakia? Is that answering your question?
Yeah, I got it. My second question is, do you need to study the eligibility criteria of the paper? I mean, studying the quality, like whether this evidence is high evidence, whether the findings are like you need to do for systematic review,
No, you don't need to do that.
so
You
that
don't need
you can
to
include
to
more.
yes, because like I mentioned that even like scope, because you are scoping, you scope that topic, so it doesn't matter what are the papers, what are the evidence that you've got. You can just as long as those papers, like I mentioned, you can also come up, you can also search at the websites or the policies. So you can just, as long as it is related to your research questions and your objectives, so that paper can be included into your scoping review.
Okay, okay. My next question, sorry, but
It's
my
okay.
next question would be, okay, for example, you in your paper just now, BMJ, you studied, finally concluded from 14 papers, right? 14 articles. So do you need to do an analysis of these 14 papers? For example lah, 10 papers say blood group O. So that would be 10 over 14 berapa persen tu? Macam tu lah berapa persen. Do you need to produce findings like that? Macam um, 5 papers out of 20 say that group A. You know what I mean? Do you
Yes,
need
yes,
to,
yes,
yeah, do you need to
yes.
do analytical analysis like that?
No, we just mentioned like I mean kalau systematic review, you need from those many papers, you need to ada calculate those odd ratios semua kan
Yeah,
from those papers, right? So
yeah.
for scoping review, you don't need that. You just can mention that, okay, from let's say from 6 papers for allergic rhinitis, we found out like 4 papers saying that blood group O,
Mm-hmm.
blood group O are associated. So we just mention like that.
Mm,
Huh.
right.
That's why we cannot, that's why in the conclusion, we cannot say that
Mm,
um blood group O. It just based on the number of papers, unless we do the, because we actually, for that paper, the reviewer asked us to upgrade to systematic review. They told us to, one of the reviewer asked us to do a systematic review instead of publishing in scoping review. But we think that we already done scoping review, so we change the sentence saying that we just want to provide the evidence, so that is acceptable.
right. Do you need to, is it obligated to publish protocols, or you don't have to, you just straight away just publish your review?
No, it's not a must to publish the protocol. But
Okay.
if you want to have many papers, then you are encouraged to to publish the protocol, because looking at the protocol, it is simple. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's you just follow your protocol, and then you add sentence, you add that, and you can straight away publish. And usually BMJ Open, BMC, they accept this protocol.
Okay, maybe my last question regarding the research questions. How usually how many, or is there a maximum, like research questions that you want to focus in the review?
No, there are no minimum, there are no maximum questions. It's up to you. If you have more questions, then you will have to chart the evidence. You have to extract the data, more data you need to extract. So your paper will be longer because there are more information, more evidence that you need to extract from that. Usually what I came across, if you look at other papers that have been published on scoping review, usually they even like only one objective, or mostly I think up to three or four research questions.
Mm. So the research questions still are very narrow to the title kan. For example, just now you gave an example about personalized medicine or precision
Yes.
medicine with breast cancer treatment, right? So
Mm.
the subject is personalized medicine or precision medicine. So the research question would be just for example, methods. What are the methods used, right? I mean,
Yes.
see what is the success rate or something that so it's still very
It
confined.
it it depends.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it confirm, meaning that it's really narrowed to
Yeah.
that, because but it depends. It doesn't mean that you need to look at the methods. Maybe you want to, it depends on what you want to look for. For example, if you have a project that is quite big, but you of course you want to do like a review to explain on this. So it is up to you on your research questions, like what you really want to look at. So that is the one that you're going to take up.
Yeah, okay. So is there any questions from the floor? Any questions?
Yeah,
Anyone
please.
want to ask anyone anything?
Yeah, doctor, please. Hello.
Hello, yes.
Please speak up.
Yes, Zahra. I
Yeah,
see Zahra.
yeah. Please, I have a question. Actually, I would like to asking, I can use literature review paper to create scoping review paper.
Yes, I mentioned that you can use a grey literature to be included in your scoping review.
So I have to mention it inside my reference. This is literature review, or just take the reference from the literature review and use it in my scoping review.
You need to include that grey literature in your, like I mentioned, like I show you the Prisma, this one, the Prisma Flow, the Prisma 2009, this one. Okay, so here you can see my slide, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Prisma. So you need in your, like this one is through the database searching. So other sources. So for the grey literature, it will be included in here through other sources. So you will include those from your grey literature here, the numbers. And you also need to mention in your, so you need also to be um in your summary here
Okay.
in the
Okay.
tables.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Welcome.
Okay, in the meantime, for USM staff, you can click on the link provided by Puan Zaleha for the CPD 1 point CPD. Yeah. Puan Zaleha, there's no QR code. Is there QR code? I think there's no QR code, so you need to fill in the from the Google form. Yeah. Okay. I think with that, we will end this session. So on behalf of the Breast Cancer Translational Research Program at IPPT, we truly feel very grateful to Dr. Siti Mardiana, who spent her valuable time with us this afternoon. So in the future, we are looking forward to have maybe a workshop with Dr. Siti Mardiana, and we will also invite other people who are interested to join this so that we can create a group of people working on scoping reviews for to get more publications, and also to give a perspective of the work that you are embarking on in your research area. So thank you very much, Dr. Siti Mariana. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good afternoon, everyone. See you again.
Okay, thank you, everyone.